Go ahead and bring in Stephen Whitburn. Once again, he's running for San Diego City Council District 3. Real quick on Stephen. Stephen Whitburn is a community nonprofit director. He worked for the American Red Cross, and he currently directs the American Cancer Society here in San Diego. What's really exciting about both him and Assemblymember Todd Gloria is their history on cannabis policy. With Stephen Whitburn's going back to 2009, 2010, working on the cannabis task force during that time. So I hope I didn't miss anything there. There's a lot more to say about you, of course. But just, on that last part with the cannabis task force, I think we can really start there and talk about your experience at that time, because I think that was a little bit before cannabis was, quote unquote, cool. And we actually had a whole regulatory structure around this. And so just kind of like to start with that and your experience at that time, what you found, and then ultimately, I guess, what happened with the task force recommendations. And then I guess we'll contrast that with, hey, that was 10 years ago now. How do you compare that with our current industry? You're on mute.
Dallin, glad to, and thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this. It's really good to be here. I was active in supporting legalization of cannabis as far back as the early 1980s when I was attending rallies. So I've, long been in support of cannabis legalization. And so back in 2009, when San Diego's next mayor, Todd Gloria, who's going to be joining you next, he nominated me to serve on the City of San Diego's medical marijuana task force, and the City Council appointed me, and it was really a terrific experience. We reviewed the existing laws as it replied to medical marijuana. We took testimony from folks. There were those who, came and testified that marijuana was the first step to eternal damnation, but most of the people who came were supportive of it and wanted good regulations. And then we drafted a regulatory policy. A lot of time was spent on the land use aspects of it. And then I was actually charged with going around to some of the community planning groups and trotting out those proposed regulations. And I thought that going to some of those community planning groups, which in many cases have older people who are participating in them, I thought I'd get a lot of blowback, and I actually didn't. People were really receptive to the proposed ordinances, wanted to see more dispensaries. And in fact, I had one planning group that was unhappy at the fact that they didn't have a dispensary in the neighborhood. So the city was really ready for this, I think. And I also heard from people who I knew, who knew that I was on the task force and really wanted me to know how important the issue was to them. And that's what really personalized it for me. I had a good friend who suffered from AIDS who told me how important it was to give him an appetite. And he has since passed on, but it really made a difference in my understanding of how important it was. And another woman who had brain cancer, who shared with me that it was really the one mechanism that gave her some relief from the pain that she was feeling. So I really came to become passionate about the issue and wanted to make sure that everybody has access to it. So that's why I believe this issue is so important, and I'm eager to get to work on it on the City Council.
Great. Yes, and we'd love to have you there and can't wait for it as well. So I guess transitioning from that to present day, I guess the recommendations that you proposed to the task force versus what we have now, I guess, what did you propose at that time? What were your findings during that I guess research period? And then, yeah, what are your thoughts on the current status of the industry?
Sure. We had a pretty a good variety of perspectives on the task force. And a lot of the time that we spent had to do with the distances that had to exist between dispensary sensitive uses and such, and what constituted a sensitive use, whether it was a park or, what have you, a church. And, I was sort of with the group that took a more permissive attitude and felt like we didn't want to create so many sensitive uses and challenges that would make it difficult to cite a dispensary anywhere. Because as you
Yeah.
know, if you put up enough roadblocks, you basically block a dispensary from being able to be cited. And then there were those who felt like there needed to be, 1,000-foot distance requirements and such. We ultimately ended up with recommendations that were roughly around 600 feet. And I think it's more or less reflective of where we're at right now. I think it is still, at this point in the city, pretty challenging to cite. Well, I know it's pretty challenging to cite a dispensary, and I think that the distance requirements and sensitive uses are part of that. I mean, take District 3, for example. District 3, which I'll represent, includes downtown San Diego, Balboa Park, and the neighborhoods all around it. When Prop 64 came before voters in 4 years ago, 2016, the District 3 residents passed it with almost 77% of the vote in District 3. It was
overwhelmingly.
It was the largest yes vote on cannabis legalization in the city of San Diego. People in my district want to see, access. Yet, we only have 2 dispensaries in District 3 out of the 4 that are enabled under the current regulations. And even those 2 aren't in the heart of District 3. They're kind of down in Mission Valley. So,
nothing downtown or in North Park, or Hillcrest.
You would think, right? I mean, it's so, and you want to make access, you want to make it available to people. And if they have to go way out of their way, it's not really as accessible as we need it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, so I guess, on council, what changes would you want to make? I guess, how would you get licenses or businesses into the areas we just talked about?
Right. Well, I mean, I think what we really need to do is sit down with the industry, sit down with those who want to, establish a dispensary, and really try to understand exactly what are the barriers. I mean, obviously, the amount of time, the amount of money it takes to get something started. Those are barriers for a lot of people who just don't have, access to that kind of time and that kind of money to start a business. So, I think what I want to do is to make it simpler, at least a little simpler, for people to get a dispensary up and running. I mean, we still have a capacity for 12 dispensaries under the current caps, which gives you an indication of how hard it's been. So if it's that hard, and we need, to give people more access, then we need to, take a look at the regulations and see what we can do to make it a little simpler for people to get a business going.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I guess on that as well, social equity is another big aspect of the industry right now, or I guess lack of equity and diversity in the marketplace. There are a few other jurisdictions that have started putting together social equity programs to help, I guess, diversify the licensing of those businesses. Have you put any thought into that, or what you would like to see or do, or I guess what would be contained in the program around that?
Well, I mean, there's no question that we need to advance social equity as it, pertains to the industry. I mean, it was people of color who were, and frankly, continue to be most negatively affected by the laws that have been unfairly and inequitably enforced, with cannabis laws. Certainly, and still on the federal level, and for many, many years here in California and in San Diego. And of course, people are still feeling the effects of that, and it was grossly unfair. So I think that we do have a responsibility to ensure that some of the folks who were most negatively impacted by the inequitable laws or enforcement of those laws have a real opportunity to start a business and advance and take advantage of the new laws to have that kind of business success. So, I would be interested in hearing from some of those folks who are most impacted and have been most impacted as to what they think would be most beneficial. But I am very much wanting to have that conversation.
Okay, great. All right. Another big thing that's on everybody's minds is taxation in the industry, both at a local level and the state level. Last year, July of 2019, the city tax increased from 5% to 8%. I mean, the effective tax rate on cannabis products is, pretty close, or around 35 to 40% over illicit market products, which is why we're still having such a thriving illicit market, or one of the main reasons. Any thought on that? Like, what can we do there? Also, kind of throw another, talking point in that is, I think an article just came out yesterday that the city of San Diego lost out on $300 million because of the pandemic. So I guess, what are your thoughts on taxes? How can we rely on the cannabis industry to help make up for some of the loss in revenue elsewhere, while not keeping taxes too high that it's forcing consumers to go to the illicit market?
Well, we have a real responsibility in San Diego, and I think statewide, to crack down on the illicit market. I mean, we have established a legal regulatory structure that allows for the operation, provides a pathway to the operation, provides revenue for the state and the city. And if we're all at the same time allowing other operators to operate illegally, then that just undermines the whole process. So I think we need to prioritize supporting the legal businesses and disallowing and cracking down and enforcing the laws as it applies to the illicit operators. I think that there has been some movement toward eliminating advertising from the illicit operators, and I think that's right. And I think that broader enforcement is also necessary. It's very expensive to run these businesses, and if we're going to ask legal operators to pay so much in taxes and fees and then allow others to not pay, that's just unfair. So we need to crack down on that.
Yeah. Okay. And then on the enforcement aspect of it, kind of in the midst of everything else going on, it's I think more or less unique to the cannabis industry and maybe one or two other industries in that the police department are the ones doing enforcement or code enforcement type of investigations in these facilities. Would you, or I guess any thoughts on maybe changing that more to actual code enforcement, doing these type of enforcement, having the enforcement mechanism instead of the police department?
I would support having it be code enforcement as opposed to the police department. I think we need to get away from viewing cannabis as an illicit substance. And I think that, when you have the police department being the enforcement mechanism, it just adds to that perception, which we don't need. I mean, I think code enforcement is a perfectly reasonable way to be, enforcing those regulations. And frankly, our police department, I'm sure most people in the police department would rather be addressing their core mission, which is responding to emergencies and, fighting crime. Right now, so many of our police officers are involved in this sort of activity or the first line of contact for people who are homeless and so on and so forth. I think that we should have our codes enforced by code enforcement.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would make a little bit more sense. Okay, those are the end of my questions. I think we'll jump over to question and answer from anybody else here. If you have anything, go ahead and put it in the question and answer portion. Let's see if we have any. I think Patty, you had your hand raised. I didn't know if you had a question. Go ahead and type it in the chat there. All right. I guess while we're waiting on that, just any thoughts on your race? I guess give us a little synopsis of how the race is going. I guess know, we just talked about ballots dropping in, gosh, 18 days. So they're coming up
Right.
pretty quick, but anything there while we wait
Yeah.
for a couple of questions?
The election is upon us. The ballots
Yeah.
drop on October 5th, and of course the election itself is on November 3rd. I mentioned how pro-cannabis the district is. District 3 is the most heavily Democratic district in the city of San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Democrat, and I'm endorsed by the San Diego County Democratic Party, so that's extraordinarily helpful. In that, I was endorsed by the Blue Dream Democrats, which is the pro-cannabis Democratic Club, and was very appreciative of having that endorsement. The Sierra Club has endorsed me. The labor unions have endorsed me. Every organization that has interviewed the candidates and made an endorsement in this race has endorsed our campaign. We've raised significantly more money than our opponent. So we're in a strong position as long as we keep working hard. And I'm going to keep my foot on the gas and make sure we finish this off.
Good. Okay. All right. I think we got another question.
I'll also
okay.
say,
Another question here from. Yep.
Oh no, I was just going to say,
Right.
I would also point out that San Diego has a strong mayor form of government. And so, you'll want to really pay attention to what Assemblymember Gloria, our next mayor, has to say about this, because he'll be driving a lot of what we'll be doing. The city council is the policy arm. So, I really look forward to working with Mayor Gloria and helping to make San Diego a place with better access.
Absolutely, and we're really excited to get to him here in just a couple minutes. We had a question from Miklos, which is, would you consider methods to increasing the amount of MPFs or marijuana production facilities in San Diego be possible? Two birds, one stone, potentially using microgrids, creating additional power for the city to use as a trade.
Yeah, certainly open to that. I think that the more that we can do to, promote the business, promote access, promote production, is important. So, I'm not sure I know all the particulars of that, but it's certainly something that I would be interested in seeing how I can support.
Okay, and just kind of follow up on that, a lot of train of thought there. The marijuana production facilities, there's 40 of them that are allowed in the city of San Diego, and we reached that cap within about a year or so, like real quickly. Especially since like San Diego, we have, cannabis is still federally legal. We have the 5 going north and the 8 going east. Both of them have border checkpoints on them, which does inhibit the flow of cannabis products in and out of San Diego County. It's really important that we create kind of our own, until federal legalization, our own, I guess, micro industry that's San Diego centric. Increasing the MPF, the amount of MPF licenses is also pretty important, just so that we can kind of keep everything local, keep the revenue and all that kind of stuff local, investments local as well. So I don't know, any thoughts on that? I don't know if I had a question there, but just want to, I guess, speak to that a little bit.
Thank you for kind of fleshing that out a little bit, because I certainly understand the challenge. And, it sounds to me like that might be yet another reason to explore local banking. I mean, I know under the federal laws, it's, really difficult for a cannabis outlet to, work with a bank because of the federal laws that apply to it. So, if you have local municipal banking, that might be an advantage to doing that, because you can better support businesses given the fact that it's legal here.
Yep, exactly. All right, any other questions? We've got about time for about one more here. All right, yeah, seeing no other questions. Getting right towards the end, I guess, any last thoughts on this, or I guess any other things you'd like to see happen with cannabis in the future if you're elected?
Well,
when you're elected.
I mean, thank you. I'm more of a listener than I am a talker. I understand that the expertise around the cannabis industry lies with you and lies with many of the people who are with us this afternoon, and I look forward to hearing from you what we can do to help advance the industry in San Diego. I mean, one of the things that we need right now with the effects of the pandemic is to really grow the economy, and I think that our small businesses are going to be an enormous part of that, and the cannabis industry, of course, is a significant part of that. So I really see the cannabis industry as being part of the solution going forward for San Diego, and I look forward to hearing from you how I can better support it, and I appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. Really grateful to have you on here and to hear what your thoughts are and how we're going to move this forward. So thank you very much.
You bet.
The links,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. The links to Steve Whitburn's pages are in the chat there. If you have any other questions, you can go ahead and shoot them over to him. Thank you so much, Steve Whitburn. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.